Thanks, Marcus, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be in Sydney after finally. I only discovered about the unusual curfew that exists at the Sydney airport here, which I found quite fascinating to see that it's a federal government authority that you need to apply to if you want to have an exception to that curfew. There were some 40, almost 50 planes circling over Sydney yesterday that all had to go somewhere else to land because we couldn't land here in Sydney. Very interesting. The topic I'll be saying a few words about today is money. You could say that that's not gold, so why talk about money? But in the origins of money lies the key as to why gold is so important. And so I will largely, in the middle of my presentation, quote or refer to the very original and deep-thinking writing of Carl Menger, and in particular an essay he wrote in 1892. And there's a quote there from that essay: "Money has not been generated by law. In its origin, it is a social and not a state institution." It's a fundamental thing to know and to realize, to understand why gold is so important, irrespective of the fact that it's been thrown out of the monetary regime as we, almost 40 years ago. Even monopoly games are changing these days. The nature of money is So what is money? What is money? I mean, it's a pretty basic, fundamental question to ask, and we all use it every day, every moment of the day, to buy and sell or to exchange. But anything has been used and can be used as money. It's just that some things are better than others. And the three main uses or functions of money are those three on that slide. And it's that simple. Medium of exchange, it's something that you're quite happy to use as an intermediate means of exchange. A unit of account means you can know where you stand in terms of what you own, what you owe, your assets, your liabilities, dollars and cents, pretty clear, works pretty well. There is another element of that aspect of money, unit of account, that is having a sound measure of the value of that unit, which we don't have anymore, but we'll just put that aside for the moment. Although it's a very important characteristic, is measure. We don't have a measure anymore of what money is worth. It's all relative to each other. There is no absolute. And store of value. Store of value, of course, if you're going to be buying and selling and exchanging things with money, you want to make sure that it's going to preserve its value in case you don't really want to spend all the money you have now and spend it later. So here's the outrageous question: is this sound money? Well, is it a good medium of exchange? Absolutely. 95% of the world trade is done in US dollars. It's an excellent medium of exchange. Some are now questioning whether it's the best way to exchange, and you have more and more bilateral trade to avoid the dollar, but it certainly has been and still is a good medium of exchange. It's a good unit of account. Everybody knows what a dollar and a cent is, and you can certainly add up your assets and liabilities easily in the dollar. But is it a good store of value? At my top front slide, that symbol on the left that you might not have recognized, that's what a dollar is worth now. A dollar before the Fed, 100 years ago, is now worth a penny, a cent. So that's the dollar disappearing and becoming a cent. Well, you could argue that it's not good money, not sound money. But that's the case for all paper, including the one you've got in your pockets. And I have in my pocket today, Australian dollars, New Zealand dollars, Canadian dollars. They're all fiat currencies, and none of them are redeemable on demand at a fixed weight of gold, as was the case historically and before. So really what that means is that that money is only as good as the ability of the states issuing those currencies paying their debt. I mean, this is a pretty fundamental thing that I don't think anybody would disagree with. But the other aspect to that, because that debt needs to be financed and people buy the bonds, that's why people have bonds in their portfolios, because they're financing sovereign debt. It's because they have confidence that that debt will be repaid, and those who issue the currency in which the debt is denominated will act responsibly and make sure that the value of that currency is preserved. So really, when you boil it all down to the essence, it's just a game of confidence. Just a game of confidence. So what about gold? I was very interested to see that you have a part of what Greenspan said a few months ago in your banner here. I have the full statement later on in the presentation. I thought that was a particularly important moment in this ongoing crisis. But even in '99, when you'll all be familiar with the brown bottom, when Gordon Brown forced the Bank of England to sell half of the gold at the lowest price it's been since 1980. It's known as the brown bottom. The U.S. was wondering whether they should be doing the same, and Greenspan was being questioned in the Senate committee. And this is what he said. He said, gold still represents the ultimate form of payment in the world. Fiat money, in extremis, is accepted by nobody. Gold is always accepted. And he gave the example of Nazi Germany, that during the Second World War could not buy what they needed to continue to wage war without them, if it was bought outside the country, without paying in gold. So far from being a barbarous relic, as I'm afraid I'm an investment advisor, I'm a financial analyst, I'm an actuary, and I côtoie all the professionals all the time. I gave a presentation yesterday at Melbourne to CFA charter holders, fund managers, hedge fund managers, public pension fund administrators, and so forth. And they've all been educated to believe that gold's a barbarous relic. It's a very difficult thing for them to do, to question whether that's true or whether that is a false belief. But one thing's for sure, it's not taught anymore what money is. We don't really teach that anymore. So we really don't know why there was a gold standard and not an orange juice standard or whatever it is. But gold is money and nothing else, is what J.P. Morgan himself said in 1913 when there was a crisis, banking crisis, and the Senate committee that I was having a hearing wanted to know the question, to which this was the answer. The succinct answer of J.P. Morgan was, what is the role of gold in the financial system? And he said, gold is money and nothing else. Well, of course, it's been thrown out of the monetary system, so now it's foreign to it. So it is not accepted as money, but whether it is accepted or not as legal tender, it remains money. And this is the more complete part of the answer that Greenspan gave at a speech recently at the Council of Foreign Relations in Washington, in the Q&A part of that presentation, which this comes from. He said, fiat money has no place to go but gold. If all currencies are moving up or down together, the question is relative to what? Gold is the canary in the coal mine. It signals problems, with respect to currency markets. Central banks should pay attention to it. I have no doubt that central banks pay attention to it, despite what they say publicly. Despite what Bernanke says, I have no doubt that him and his fellow central bankers are deep in thought and trying to sort out exactly what needs to happen, what kind of monetary reform we'll have, because we need reform. The Chinese are Russians and most of the creditor nations of the G20 are pushing for that. And I have no doubt that later this week in Seoul it'll be a point of discussion, although the Americans will do everything they can to keep it off the agenda. So that's Greenspan. Again, this guy just won't go. He's a fascinating character. If you haven't read his autobiography, The Age of Turbulence, I encourage you to buy it and read it. He himself says that it's a what did he call it, a mystery novel?